He actually thought that this argument is the best argument against Islam. He said, I don't have to follow Islam as a Christian, and I will continue to worship Jesus, and I have nothing to worry about. Because in the hereafter, there are only two possible outcomes. Either Jesus turns out to be God, and in this case, I will be saved. Or Allah turns out to be God, and here also I will be saved. And let me tell you why. Because in that case, I will just stand before Allah and tell Him, well, it's your fault that I worship Jesus. I worship Jesus because you deceived me into worship Him. I worship Jesus because you made it appear as if He was crucified. You even mentioned in your own book that you are the best of all deceivers. This is why I will stick to my church and worship the man God for the rest of my life. Better than, worshipping the best of all deceivers, right? This is the argument he came up with while he was exploring Islam. But his argument had two mistakes. Can you guess them? The first mistake was this statement. I worship Jesus because you made it appear as if he were crucified. When he said that, I asked him, if, let's say, Prophet Abraham had been killed or crucified, would you have worshipped him too? If Prophet Moses had been crucified, would you also worship him? Do you really have to worship everyone who gets killed? The way the Prophet died should not affect the religion of his followers. The real reason you are worshipping a man is because of the stories that were made up about him later by people who never met him. Like, Paul and others, I will expose their real story later. But the point now is, the way a man dies has nothing to do with turning him into a man god. It's just the way he died. The second mistake is attributing the label deceiver to God. I often hear some Christian preachers saying that God is a deceiver, God is a deceiver. For a long time, I didn't know where they got this idea from. So I decided, you know what? I will do some in-depth research and I will find those verses that they are basing their claim on. And here is what I found. Lord, you have completely deceived people by saying you will have peace when the sword is at our throats. Wait, what? I didn't expect that. Is the verse actually saying that the Lord deceived the people? No, there might be something wrong. Let's read the next one. You deceived me, Lord, and I was deceived. You made everyone mock me. God, sometimes you prove to be reliable and sometimes you prove to be deceptive. Wait, what? But if the prophet is deceived and speaks a message, it was I, the Lord, who deceived the prophet. The Lord deceived the prophet? Is the Lord really a deceiver? Maybe they are up to something. The Lord has put a deceiving spirit in the mouth of his prophets. Does that mean that God is deceiving the prophets? Or God is asking the prophets to deceive us? That's horrible. Because either way, it will mean that whatever we heard from the prophets isn't true. We shouldn't trust the prophets? And he is admitting it openly in the book like that? Have I been lied to all my life by the prophet? And if that's the case, why is God deceiving us? What is the point? The closest that I got to an answer was this verse. God sends upon them a misleading influence, a work of error and a strong delusion, and here is the intention, to make them believe what is false. The verse is claiming that God is intentionally deceiving people into believing what is false. Are you as surprised as I am? Do you think there will be a way to explain all of these verses to, defend the book? Or should I just admit that these verses are calling God a liar and a deceiver? You know what? I don't really have to defend these verses because none of them are from the Quran. They are all from the Bible, specifically Jeremiah 4:10, Jeremiah 27, Psalms 18:26, Ezekiel 14:9, and 2 Chronicles 18:22. And by the way, I also found this in John 7. Jesus said, I'm not going to the festival. However, after they went away, he also went to the festival but in secret. If that is not a lie, then what is? Anyway, now let's go back to Islam. The Christian preachers are claiming that Allah admits to being a deceiver in Surah Ali Imran, verse 54. Let's open it together and look for the word deceiver, because the translation here says planner, and even if you hover over every word to get the word by word translation, it says planner. And if you open another translator, it also says planner. So where did they get this word deceiver from? Did they mistakenly read it from the Bible and then claim it's in the Quran? Or did they purposely make it up? The word here in the verse is maker, comes from the verb makara. This is one of the words that doesn't have a direct English equivalent, because as you can see, Arabic has 13 million words while modern English has only 600k. So instead of finding a word that fits as an English translation, I will just tell you exactly what it means by using examples. Imagine an evil foreign country trying to invade your land and steal your wealth. The evil foreign army leader will do makr, i.e. offensive war plan against your people. And your own good army leader will also do makr, i.e. a defensive war plan to protect your people. Both plans are called makr. Both the good and the evil are called makr. Another example. Imagine that a bunch of criminals abducted your son and they are planning to crucify him. What they are doing is called makr. So you, the good guy, the father, you made a smarter plan to free your son from the criminal. Your plan is also called makr. So they planned to kill your son and you planned to free him, and you are a better planner, so you freed your son. What they did is called evil makr, and what you did is called good makr. And your makr is better than theirs, so you won. Is there anything wrong here? No? Okay, now the story in the Quran. They claimed that we killed the Messiah, the son of Mary. But they didn't. Instead, Allah raised him up. They planned, that is evil makr, and Allah also planned, that is the good makr, and Allah is the best planner. Wallahu khayrul makirin. Meaning, God's good plan to save Jesus was better than their evil plan to kill him, and Allah saved him in the end. Where is the issue here? And someone might ask, where is the proof that there is a good and evil makr? Or in other words, where is your proof that the word makr can be used to describe both evil and good plans? Well, that's very easy. Here is a verse in the Quran that is distinguishing between the evil type of makr and the good type of makr. And it is stating that those who do the evil makr only will have bad consequences. Also, another popular question that is usually raised about these verses. They didn't kill Jesus, but it was made to appear so. They say Allah is the one who made it appear that someone else looked like Jesus and died. Allah tricked them, Allah deceived them, and Allah also caused an innocent man to die. Again, where did you get that from? Because they keep coming up with these stories from something. Did you make it up or did you read it somewhere? The verse here is saying it was made to appear so. The verse doesn't say it was made by whom. Who fooled people into thinking that Jesus was crucified? Why did you assume that Allah is the doer in the verse? Why didn't you assume that it was Paul? Isn't Paul the one who first spread the idea that Jesus was crucified and died for your sins and stuff? Why didn't you assume that this verse is talking about those other people who claimed to be eyewitnesses to the event of the crucifixion, even though they lived 400 years after Jesus? Aren't those the people who actually made it appear so? Also, this story that there was a man that looked like Jesus and was crucified in his place, where did you get that from? Can you bring me this story from the Quran or from the Hadith or from any authentic Islamic source? Actually, you can't. Because this is the story some Christians believed before they became Muslims, and they brought it with them. Before Islam, they were following some Gnostic Gospels, specifically these Gospels. And then when they became Muslims, they brought the story with them. But it doesn't exist in Quran or Hadith or any authentic Islamic source. And whether this story is real or not, we don't care. It's not part of our religion. It's part of a Gnostic gospel. All the verse is saying is that someone was responsible for making people believe that Jesus was crucified, even though he wasn't. Who is this someone? Well, subscribe because I will expose his whole story. Not now, though. Another question that is usually raised about this topic. Historically, many people believed that Jesus was crucified, and the Quran seems to contradict history by claiming otherwise. Well, it doesn't, because the verse literally says people thought he was crucified, and history says people thought he was crucified. So in reality, the Quran and history are saying the exact same thing. People thought he was crucified, and history records what people thought. Where is the problem? Do you know what is really not aligned? When the Bible claims that the Father promised Jesus that no harm will befall him, see, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near you, angels will guard you, and listen to this part because it's really nice. And the angels will lift you up. See, lift you up. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him. If you have a promise like that from God himself, you wouldn't worry about anything, right? No one can harm you. But when it was time for the Father to actually fulfill his promise to Jesus and order, the angels to lift him up, it seems like that promise was broken. Even though Jesus prayed for the cup of death to be lifted from him. Even though Jesus kept calling for help, my God, why have you forsaken me? We had a deal. You said you would rescue me. That sounds like a broken promise for me. That sounds like betrayal. God said, he will call on me and I will answer him. But when Jesus kept asking for help before and during the crucifixion, God completely abandoned his call. Does it make more sense to you to believe in the idea of God breaking his promise, or to believe that Jesus was actually saved and God fulfilled his promise and lifted him up? And it was made to appear to you by, some people in the 4th century who claimed to be eyewitnesses that he was crucified. Next time you talk to those Christian preachers, just ask them why their own scripture describes God as a deceiver in all of those verses. Why does it seem like the Father broke his promise to his Son? And finally, most importantly, why did Jesus say one thing and do the other about going to the festival? Isn't he supposed to be sinless? And by the way, if you heard them talking about the so-called Islamic dilemma, asking how come the Quran confirms the Bible while also condemning it, while also claiming it's corrupted, don't worry. Because I fully refuted this claim in this video. Click up here or in the link in the description, but before you go, share the reward with us by helping this video spread. جزاكم الله خيرا. Salaam alaikum.